Travel Talk, where our expert magical memory planners discuss ways you can have fun, memorable, and stress-free family vacations. Hi, and welcome to Travel Talk. On this episode of Travel Talk, we are going to be talking about Alaska. So my family and I have just gotten back from our Alaska cruise. We went on the Holland America Cruise Line, and we learned so much about Alaska, and it is such an important destination that so many people are interested in right now. I thought now would be the perfect time to talk a little bit about Alaska and share with you about 5 tips and some information that you might find helpful regardless of how you plan to travel to Alaska. So first of all, Alaska is the 49th state of the United States, so it is not really an international trip per se, and it has the slogan, Land of the Midnight Sun. And that was super fun because we were able to see the sun rise around 3:30 in the morning, and it never really got fully dark when we were at the furthest north of our cruise. And so that was kind of a fun thing to wake up during the night and still see some sun out there. It wasn't really sunshiny, but it wasn't really completely dark either. And then it started with sunrise again. So a super fun and interesting destination to include into your plans. And a lot of people are really interested in it right now. So I'm going to talk to you first about departure ports. So a lot of people might be thinking about doing a river cruise, ocean cruise as a way to see Alaska. And that is a common way to do it. So if you're looking at a cruise to Alaska, you're usually looking at a couple of ways of doing that. So one is to do what we would call a closed loop or a round trip. And those generally leave from Seattle, Washington or Vancouver, Canada. For us, it worked out really well to go out of Seattle. There's a few reasons for that, and some of these may overlap with you. So some of the reasons why we chose Seattle, one is that was a domestic flight to Seattle, which was a little easier for us than a flight to Vancouver, which is international. I also have with my credit card and flight rewards free luggage if I'm traveling domestically, but not if I'm traveling internationally. So that made it a good reason also to fly to Seattle, because then we didn't have to pay for our 6 pieces of luggage, and that saved us quite a bit. So either one of those could be good options though for you, whether you're doing Seattle or Vancouver, if you're looking for the round trip option. And that is generally a 7-night cruise that leaves round trip from one of those ports. The other option with cruising Alaska is to go on an open-ended cruise and include a cruise tour. So cruise tour is land time that you would spend before or after your cruise and go further into Alaska, usually it goes to Denali National Park, and there are some that go over to the Yukon in Canada as well. So if you are looking to do an open-ended cruise that includes a cruise tour, then you are most likely going to do the cruise tour either before or after your cruise portion, and the cruise portion will be a one-way. So the way that this might work out is if you are doing a cruise from maybe Fairbanks, you might want to fly into Fairbanks and do your cruise tour first, and then from the cruise tour will end at your cruise port where you would board the ship and then do a one-way southbound from there back to your end point, which might be Vancouver or Seattle, and then you would fly home from there. In the reverse, you might board in Seattle or Vancouver, do a one-way northbound, and then do your cruise tour at the end, and then maybe fly home from Fairbanks. So what we would probably recommend in most cases, if the dates worked for you, is to fly to Fairbanks and do your cruise tour first. This way you're doing all your land and all your adjustments and things like that, and all your busy touring, and then work your cruise on the way home, giving you that little bit of relaxation at the end as you're heading back to your final destination. So that would be our recommendation in most cases, although obviously meeting with someone one-on-one and finding out their particular needs might change what they're looking for. So that's a little bit about the departure port options for most cruises to Alaska. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the cruise lines. So there are lots of cruise lines that go up to Alaska, and they all kind of say they're the best in Alaska, which is great. We did Holland America Line. We have agents on Princess and Norwegian and Disney Cruise Line all doing Alaska. So really picking the cruise line has a lot to do with what you're looking to get out of the cruise and who you're traveling with. So if you're looking for a cruise that is the most important thing is how you're going to experience Alaska specifically. then that might lead you to one cruise option. If you're looking for something that is going to give you a lot of options of entertainment for the kids, maybe you're traveling with younger children or a multi-generational group, and Alaska is part of the program, but what's happening on the ship is also a key part of your vacation, then that might lead you to a different cruise line. So it's really important in helping to pick your cruise line to determine like kind of what are the goals of the vacation. And if it's all about Alaska, that might lead you in one direction, and depending on the makeup of your group and what experiences you want on board, that might lead you in a different direction. So those are just some things we would want you to consider and to kind of think through before you talk to your travel agent to decide, help them give you the best recommendations for your family. So, when you're up in Alaska, a lot of what to do is either excursions or views from the ship. And so how self-entertaining you are is another component of that. If you're great with playing cards or playing board games, doing puzzles, reading, and a lot of self-entertainment, things like that, again, that might lead you in one direction for a cruise line pick, versus if you need a lot of childcare options, if you want a lot of entertainment on board, or you need ways to distract the kids and keep them entertained, that, again, will lead you to a different option. So just some things there to consider. Okay, so that leads us to our next part about Alaska, and that is Glacier Bay. So Glacier Bay National Park is a huge part of every Alaska destination, vacation, or cruise. And that is really where you get to see some of the most amazing sights. And this is a port, as you would say, that's not really a port, right? Because you're not going to get off in Glacier Bay, most likely. You're probably cruising through Glacier Bay, seeing the views, seeing glaciers, and things like that. So this is another key thing when picking cruise lines and other things to think about what is involved in Glacier Bay. There is a national park up there, so there might be some services from the National Park Service that come aboard your ship in order to give you more information and to show you more. Your cruise ship itself might travel to certain parts of Glacier Bay and see certain glaciers that are in Glacier Bay. And so this is, again, just an important understanding of what to expect, the time that you'll be in Glacier Bay, how long you'll be there, what time of day it will be, what glaciers you're planning to see, what areas of Glacier Bay you will be cruising through, and then what services are going to be available on the cruise ship for you to learn about Glacier Bay, whether it's from the National Park Service or another local expert. So this is really one of the coolest things of being in Alaska and being out in Glacier Bay and really having it surround you. I mean, we have pictures of Glacier Bay, but I can't even explain what it looks like when you're on the boat and you're looking up and it's like huge and it's all around you, and what it looks like and what it sounds like and what it smells like, and just the whole experience of being out there is really quite amazing. So again, a really cool part about going to Alaska, and probably one of the highlights and things that people most look forward to. Okay, the next part of an Alaskan vacation, particularly an Alaskan cruise, is thinking about the ports. So you'll generally hit a couple of ports in Alaska while you're on your cruise, and this kind of depends on your itinerary a little bit, whether you're doing that round trip, inside passage, a one-way, northbound or southbound. So all those things will factor into some of those ports. But the ports is where you're really going to have the opportunity to go on those excursions that you hear about a lot probably when people talk about Alaska. So some of the highlights and the coolest things to do when you're in port, there are multiple opportunities for fishing. If you are into fishing, particularly salmon or halibut, there are some amazing fishing programs on these cruise itineraries and these cruise ports, from large boats all the way to small boats. When we went on our fishing excursion, it was a small boat with a limited number of people. They were able to get their fish. You had to, they gave you the information ahead of time. You needed to get your fishing license for Alaska, including your king salmon stamp. And that was a really cool thing because they really got out there and they were able to catch some fish. They actually were able to catch king salmon. And again, if you're looking at fishing as an excursion, one tip I have for you is to think about the timing of that. We were there in the middle of June, and literally our fishing excursion was the first day of king salmon season where you could keep it. So that's an important part to consider if you're looking for fishing and what season it is, what fish are available, and what, like the fishing rules are for that time of year. We could have done a fishing excursion earlier in our sailing, and then they would not have been during that salmon season. So that's why we picked the day that they were going to do it based on that. So super important to look at some of those things if you're interested in fishing. There were options to ship our fish home. So you might want to budget for that if that's something you're looking to do. But it was just like a really cool experience to be out there fishing. Another excursion we did was to the glaciers. So there's a wide range of trips to glaciers, everything from flyovers to heading onto the glaciers and being able to walk around and things like that. And so again, this is kind of something that is very popular. Booking excursions are really important to do ahead of time, as early as you can, because they do sell out and they are very popular. So there is, again, a wide range of options of going to glaciers. We did like a 5 glacier flyover. This was a really cool small seaplane with a limited number of people, headsets so you could hear the instructions, and we learned so much about glaciers. That was just really, really cool. If you are prone to motion sickness, keep that in mind for these smaller planes, and you might want to bring something with you or take something ahead of time if you typically do that because you're prone to motion sickness. That may be applicable here. So that's the tip for that excursion. But yeah, a wide range of things. And some of them are combos where you can kind of do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So if there's really a lot of things you want to do, a combo excursion might be your best option. The other excursion we went on was to the Iditarod dog sled summer camp. And that was also really cool. The dogs that they use for the Iditarod usually live in other parts of the country, and because they're so active and they need to run so much every day, they can't stay there in the summer because it gets too hot. So they actually go up to Alaska for summer camp, and that's where the dogs are able to run and exercise and do all the things they love to do all summer long without overheating. And so we learned a ton about the dogs and their programs. It's so awesome to see how much their caretakers really do love them and want what's best for them, and how much the dogs love to run and pull and do all these activities. So it was really cool on both fronts to see that. We also got to see the little puppies, and so the day we happened to be there was the first day that some of the puppies were able to be held. They had just opened their eyes the day before, and they were super tiny. And there were some older puppies there too that we had to love on to, because you don't want to just love on the little ones. So it was just a really, really great learning experience and interesting experience as well. So for animal lovers, there are lots of different dog sled camp type activities up in the different ports, but that might be something that you want to incorporate into your excursions. But the ports are also, some of them are very able to be self-explored. So some of the ports, Sitka, for example, you can take a bus into town and just walk around. There's some other national parks there that you can walk around. There are just other, restaurants and local places, lots of great food options, lots of things that you might want to buy and ship home. We got to try like reindeer sausage and salmon jerky we had as well. So lots of little shops and little interesting local places that are really cool and awesome to support too, with the local artisans and things like that. So some of the ports are places that you might just want to get off and walk around and just experience local Alaska. And others might be ones where you want to, add an excursion and go off and do some of those very exciting things that you can only do in Alaska. Packing. So the last area I really want to talk about when we talk about Alaska is packing. Packing is really challenging because you kind of don't know what to expect. I told the kids, let's just bring a little bit of everything. We need warm clothes, summer clothes, all the things. And for the most part, we just wore our winter clothes, from the basic of like jeans and a t-shirt all the way up to the warmer coats, the hats, the scarves, and all of that too. So the weather up there, really does vary from day to day. It rains a lot, so waterproof coats and warmer rain gear was a great thing that we had that. Hats, of course, and things like that. Shoes that are going to be able to manage that as well, so that if your feet get wet or your shoes get wet, you have something else to wear the next day. And even being on board, going up and playing pickleball on like the sports deck and things like that, it was really quite chilly out there. And then surprisingly, when we were in Glacier Bay, which was one of the most northern parts of Alaska that we were in on our sailing, was actually the warmest day. And I think it just had a lot to do with it being very sheltered between the mountains. It was sunny and there was really no breeze. And so it just was a beautiful day. I mean, that's when we ended up in like jeans and t-shirts, being outside and just being super comfortable in the weather. So, you know, the key for Alaska, everyone will say pack in layers, and that is true. Just make sure you have plenty of warm things, an umbrella, a raincoat or something like that is insulated, and just the ability to layer on multiple things so that you can get as warm or as cool as you need to be. And we really didn't wear any summer clothes the whole time. Now, our ship had the amazing indoor pool and spa area, which was awesome. So there was hot tubs and swimming that was in a covered area that was like a see-through roof. So it was bright and sunny in there, but always comfortable as far as temperature in order to go swimming. So we actually had swimsuits and things to do that. But most of the time when we were outside, it was pants. And the other thing to keep in mind too with the ship is that it can be chilly on board, in the sense that every time someone goes in and outside, when the doors were open to open up to the bow or the back of the ship, or people are coming in and out of the food areas with like sliding doors, it kind of lets in that gust of cooler air because it is chillier outside. So the ship itself, even on the inside, didn't really ever get hot because you had that in and out going, especially if you were in parts of the air of the ship that had access to the outdoors and people were coming in and outside. So packing, you're going to need all those different things. You're also going to want to make sure you have, if you're a photography type person, you're going to want to have your photo equipment. There was amazing sights to view, so you really want to have something to take great photos. And even if you're not a photographer, you know, make sure you bring your phone with you. Make sure you're cleaning your lens off right before you take your photos. Bring some lens wipes or something like that so that you're getting really clear photos. You can really take quite amazing photos from your phone. Just make sure your photo lenses are clear on there because they tend to get gunky because your phone's everywhere. So just cleaning that lens can really help and help you get like a great photo. And then binoculars. If you have binoculars, you can buy them on board. Most ships will sell them as well. But that might be something that you want to buy ahead of time. When we were in Glacier Bay, there was some goats on the hillside that you could see. People were often sitting outside, especially if you're patient. You can sit out there with binoculars and watch. You might see a whale. You might see some sea otters. We saw different creatures out in the water, and binoculars would be really helpful with that. So if you want to see animals up close, if you really want to be sure to see whales and some of those things, then I highly recommend booking an excursion, because then that'll give you a more guaranteed view. But if you're patient and you're sitting outside and looking and watching for a while, you'll never know what you'll see out there. And our captain was great because either our captain or one of the other staff would kind of let us know if we were in an area that attracted a lot of wildlife that we should be watching for. So that was awesome too. But yeah, aside from the clothing and then some of those other items, another thing we brought with us was insulated cups, which we don't typically do on Caribbean sailings. But, you know, walking around with a hot cup of coffee and keeping it hot for a while, hot chocolate or tea, was really quite enjoyable, especially when we were sitting outside or looking outside. And so we brought insulated hot cups, and we used those a lot more than we used our water bottles. So that was another great thing that we brought on this trip that I thought was really helpful, that you might want to consider bringing. And so there's just, you know, so much to cover about Alaska, and this is just really a short glimpse into it, but I hope that it gives you some ideas and some tips if you're thinking about Alaska as a future vacation, or if you have one coming up. These do sell out quickly. The Alaska season is generally May to September, and by summertime, you know, by May, June, the current season is probably mostly sold out, but it's the perfect time to start booking for the next summer. So if this is something you're looking to do in the next year or two, now is the perfect time to start getting quotes and start getting that stuff nailed down so that you have the best options for rooms and categories and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed our little talk about Alaska, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks, bye.